Hi, Patrice.
Hi, Shonda. How are
Wow.
you?
Good. How are you doing?
Well, thank you. I'm excited about our topic.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about, right? And we're definitely going to break this up, but I guess I'll go ahead and just talk about where we're headed today or today and in the next few podcasts. So, we're going to try our best to take a deep dive into the top 5 sources of toxins
Mm,
that can be making us sick. You know, um, it started with a website. It was what'sadetox.com. I'll put that in the show notes. And so let's see, why should you detox? It's a great question. Our bodies have the ability to eliminate toxins and unwanted matter naturally.
mm,
Various organs, such as the liver and the kidneys, aid in this toxin removal. But these organs become overwhelmed over time.
mm.
So we want to do something about not overwhelming our organs over time, right?
Honestly, I was just glad you brought this up because I see detoxing everywhere these days. So,
Yeah, it's been a subject for a long time. And, you know, I think there's a right way. Well, let me say there are drastic ways of doing detox, and then there are more simple ways of detoxing, and we're just talking about helping your body to do what its normal function is to do, which is to detox. And so if we've overwhelmed those organs that detox, then we may need a little help. We may need to try to avoid toxins so that those organs can work better, for
exactly.
yeah, let's concentrate on a specific time of removing toxins and avoiding toxins so that we can heal better during that time.
And that's why I thought it was so great that we're going to just talk about what are some of the main toxins.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So the last point that this website makes is the accumulation of excess toxins caused by poor lifestyle choices and environmental factors. So we're
Mm,
going to be talking about all of those. You want to introduce those 5 sources that we're going to be talking about today and in a
sure.
few.
Okay, let me see if I can remember them. If not, I'll look at my note. But I think the first was food, and then water, and then environment. And then the fourth one was personal care and beauty products. Now that I think about how could I forget? And then last but not least at all would be our mind, our thought life for sure.
Yes. I kind of want to jump into that right away, but we can put a link. We've talked about that a little bit in some segments, so I'll put a link there, but we will talk about that in detail in an upcoming podcast,
Yeah.
in a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. We just want to discuss ways to minimize our exposure to toxins, right? And so today, let's talk about food toxins.
Okay.
And there's so much there. You're welcome to start.
Wow. Well, you said it well. There's a lot. There's a lot there. And there's just so many directions you can go with that. But just from the simplest standpoint, the more we get away from food in its natural state, the more toxin it could be. And what I mean by that is if we're eating food in containers and preserved food with long shelf lives, we have toxins to contend with. And then another toxin that you pointed out is before it even gets to the store, it was grown out in a field. And we'll talk probably at more length about the environment and perhaps, well, we know use of different chemicals being used on crops. So that's another toxin. So there's just different angles from which toxicity can be discussed regarding food. Where did you want to start?
Yeah. Well, I want to reference EWG, the Environmental Working Group's website, because they have a lot of helpful articles there. They
Mm,
have a lot of helpful databases that you can look up products to see what type of toxins are there and
mm.
what levels of the toxins are there, So I really like that. And I've known for a while, but I think you were the first person that pointed that out for me was the Dirty Dozen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Dirty Dozen. I believe that originated from EWG,
Yes.
and I believe it's still on their website. And it's the Dirty Dozen of fruits and vegetables that have the highest amount of pesticides.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they have the Clean 15. These have the least amount of pesticides on them.
I haven't seen that, but I'm glad to hear about that list too.
hmm Yeah,
Okay.
I'll definitely find that and post that below in the show notes. So, I guess number one is we want to avoid pesticides, right?
Mm,
And another good way when we're looking at that list, a little better way to avoid pesticides would be to choose organic when possible,
mm,
because there aren't supposed to be pesticides sprayed on organic foods. But there is something that we do have to be aware of when we're going to talk about later the environment, but certain crops are sprayed with pesticides. But hey, right across the road, we can have an organic farm that's going to get that same, pesticide residue on it. So this is just a fact of life, but it's going to have less pesticides if we choose organic. This is just all possibility. And I don't know to what depth EWG has listed these pesticides, the contamination amounts. They've done studies, and
mm.
there's one particular one that I really want to talk about though.
Okay.
And yeah, the chemical that's sprayed very often is glyphosate.
Mm,
Okay, so we spell that Glyphosate. And it is something that I learned about a really long time ago. They have many articles dating back as far as 2013, probably even before then. But I found a new article, and they're trying to make the public aware, but these are in our children's foods, such as cereals.
mm,
Cheerios
mm,
is a brand that has a lot of this glyphosate in it,
mm,
and so does Quaker Oats.
mm.
So I will definitely link that below, but that is really something that we need to think about. And what it is it's the Roundup weed killer.
Okay. I've heard of Roundup.
You've heard of Roundup. Well, it was specially manufactured for GMO crops
Mm,
and soy and wheat and corn. And I don't know, I'm going to have to look up the specifics. But one thing to note about soy is all the soy tofu that's on the shelves, they are non GMO. But the crops that's being sprayed that's the soybean for the soybean oil.
oh.
So that's just something to consider. So we really want to avoid soybean oil in our food. So that's an ingredient that would be on the back. Now, glyphosate would not be on the ingredient list, but soybean oil is one. What are some other things that you think about avoiding when if we're looking at packaged foods? Do you have any specifics?
One that comes to mind now that you mentioned it, and I've seen it more in drinks, especially when the kids did track, the Gatorade, the Powerades, and even the track coach used to say, "Hey kids, if you're going to use Gatorade instead of water or coconut water, which is really good, um, please avoid the red Gatorades." He would always say, "Drink the clearest in color that you could if you're going to drink Gatorade," because I mean, on the labels it says like FD different numbers for colors. That's what I've noticed a lot in some of the drinks, but I'm sure in some of the food there are colors or dyes as well. And those are not good either.
Yeah, so when we see colors, F, D, and C, number whatever, there's yellow, there's blue, there's red. Take note that the preservatives are probably included in that food too. I've just noticed that when one's in there, they just throw everything in there. And they do that to extend shelf life of those
Mm.
foods.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. The colors. And now that you mention it, the other thing I've seen is natural flavoring. And I always just thought, oh, well, it's natural. But I read somewhere and I haven't looked it up, but those are not natural really at all. They're things to avoid.
You're so right. Yes, I've definitely seen that, and we definitely need to put a link to more information about that. And
Mm.
because I've seen lists of what those natural flavors are actually. Yeah, so okay, there's just so much there, and one that I know, potassium sorbate, that's a preservative, and I'll put a link to that and what's bad about it. And these are just some things that I just remember seeing. Hydrogenated oils, although there's supposed to be a move to get those out, but they're just replacing it with something else, some other preservative because they need the food to last on the shelf, right?
True. Yeah.
Yeah. So we want to avoid preservatives. We want to avoid colors. We want to avoid um, all these, oils, like specifically soybean oil, and there are a few others. I think canola oil,
Mm.
unless it's listed as non-GMO. Um, hmm,
Wow.
because you know what?
Mm.
Like, I'm just gonna have to call it out. The Uncle Ben's rice.
Huh.
Those little packets that you can get for microwave, which I don't recommend. I know the microwave anyway. Okay, I won't go there. I try and warm up everything in the oven or the stove. But those microwave packages of rice,
Mm.
if you look closer these days, you'll see manufactured with genetically modified ingredients is on
Mm.
that package.
Oh, wow. I did not notice that, but I'm not surprised. And now that we're going through some of these things to avoid, I don't know if they're in the same category that we're speaking of, but an overabundance of sugar is not good, period. And more and more studies are showing that we probably need to detox from sugar sometimes because we just have too much going on in our products, all kinds of sugar from, yeah. And then the artificial sugars, which I've read that those may be even worse than the cane sugar. I'm sure they're worse than the cane sugar because they're not natural sugars. So the whole idea of just all the sugars, definitely the ones that are the artificial sweeteners, we probably don't want to do a lot of those.
Yeah, but the others too, like the ones you said that end in the OSE,
Mm.
those are not natural because they have been refined. They're
Oh,
removed from their natural state. And I do want to say though, a lot of the sugar that's listed, unless it says organic, the sugar that's listed on many items are from GMO crops.
oh, well, see, I would
They're-
not have known that.
oh yeah, they're from GMO crops. Beets is a GMO crop. Yeah, unless it's organic. Most sugar on products today are from beets, and they're GMO beets.
Wow. Well, I know at Trader Joe's, once we went to inquire about the corn chips or different chips that were made from corn, they said all of our chips are non-GMO. So I wonder if that would hold true for everything at their store. I don't know, but I will find out because I had never, I just see beets. I'm not thinking non-GMO beets or not. So anyway, that's good information, Shonda. We do want to let people know that, we're talking about all these things to avoid, and it could sound like a lot. It can sound overwhelming, but it's just a matter of just educating ourselves and making changes that make sense for our family. And part of making changes that will be healthier for us is eating a more plant-based, whole food diet versus more of a standard American diet. So then if you're doing more of a plant-based whole food diet, you won't have to worry as much about these different toxins, because Hopefully, you know where you're getting your food from. But what would you say to that? Because I know when I was a young mother and I started reading all this stuff and learning more and having a smaller budget, and at one point I did get a bit overwhelmed, to be honest, with a young family. The only thing I would say is don't become stressed out about this. You pray, God provides for us our health and our provisions, and also resources like EWG. If you know there are some fruits and vegetables that have more of the pesticides, then you can go to the other ones that don't. So I love how we're providing the EWG link. And on there, it sounds like not only are they telling you which ones to try to avoid, but they're telling you go to these 15 and those are good to go.
Yeah, you said it exactly. That's exactly a good thing, because we don't want to become overwhelmed, because that takes us back to creating toxic stress, in with our thinking and things like that.
Yes.
But yeah, we are just bringing this to you so that you can become more aware and you can make some wiser choices,
Mm.
you know, um, just for better health. And like you said, go for more whole foods, and it's easier to avoid all
Yeah.
of this if we're eating whole foods. And I like to add that whole foods can be made into some really delicious, scrumptious foods. If that's what you need to do, I mean, it takes a little bit more work. It does. But if that's what you need, sugar, dates, use dates, and just there are lots of great recipes that use whole foods to make the same food that you may be used to eating in the standard American diet. You can make cobblers using dates and
Mm.
oats and
Yeah.
apples and peaches. There's still ways to do this, but it takes learning a different method. I mean, just think about it. You learn to bake that cake. You had to learn, if you're making a cake from scratch, I suppose, you learn the steps to make that. So it's just about learning a different method.
Exactly. I love that encouragement. And now with the internet, hey, you can Google anything, find a video, find people doing it. You can have fun watching someone prepare something a new way. And then you can do that and then put your own spin on it. But so we can be encouraged by these different videos out there, and food doesn't have to be boring because we're eating it in its whole form. There's just so many things. For example, carrots. I just like chewing on a carrot just like it is. But if that's not enough for you, my sister told me she and her husband chop up the carrots and they cut up the dates that you just mentioned and sprinkle a little salt. And that caramelization in the oven, when you bake it with just a little salt, delicious.
Sounds like a dessert.
Yeah.
Could be for some.
Yep. For some, it could be dessert, and it could just be a side or something just new to try.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's all great stuff. There's just some really good reference material out there to help get you started. And remember, just start slowly and make a little change here and there, and to not be overwhelmed, but just think about, I made a change, I made a positive change, and it's good, and I'm going to benefit from it and carry on, right?
It's all good stuff. I love the idea that we're sharing resources. And if anyone else has any resources, please share them with us, because that's part of building a community and encouraging one another. That, like you said, it's one day at a time. It's one day at a time.
Yeah, definitely one day at a time. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll see y'all next time.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed watching today's video of our podcast. A link to the show notes can be found below this video. Also, please subscribe so you won't miss any future videos. And be sure to comment below and let us know what you think about this format. Until next time, let's just be real.